behind the countless faces we wordlessly pass each day, there are countless stories of struggle and survival, some of them beyond words. One of them is Ramiro Cristales, a 41-year-old Canadian, works in construction, married with 3 children, but with a past that constantly haunts his present. Ramiro remembers he was only 5 years old when danger came to his doorstep and would put his life on a darker path. His had been the uncomplicated life of children, growing up in a farming village in rural Guatemala. But it was a time of turmoil. And the violence was closing in. A military dictatorship unleashing its wrath on its own people. Soldiers on a determined hunt for guerrilla fighters. Massacres and bodies were piling up. One of the most infamous was about to unfold in Dos Erres, Ramiro's village. December 1982. Soldiers looking for fighters behind an ambush came to the village in civilian clothes.
There was a screaming outside and saying, wake up, open the doors.
Ramiro's mother and father were tied up. The whole family ordered out. Ramiro's memory is of the men marching everyone to the center of town.
And the moment when they took my mom was the hardest part for me, because I remember grabbing my mom from her leg.
It was this man who took Ramiro's mother away, Santos Lopez Alonzo, a face the boy would never forget and one he would encounter again. Ramiro was left in the village church with other women and children, but he was still within earshot when the soldiers started torturing the men, then later raping the women.
He smashed my sister to the tree. My sister stopped crying. My mom was screaming for help. And please, don't kill my kids. I ran to the back of the church. The church is built of wood, so you can see outside.
So there was like slats,
yeah,
and you
slats,
could watch?
Yeah. And then you can see.
You witnessed the murder of your own sister?
Yeah.
Terrible sounds were coming from the village's unfinished well. Ramiro remembers hearing screaming, and then he remembers hearing it stop. He was sure he would be next. What's happened since that forced Ramiro to live a secret life in Canada? We went to Guatemala to ask questions of our own and meet someone who fought for Ramiro even before she knew he existed. Aura Elena Farfan made it her mission to find out what happened, she says, so that history never repeats itself. Dozens of the children of Dos Erres were killed in the massacre, testament to the brutality of the perpetrators. Aura Elena went to Dos Erres to investigate, as motivated as she was in searching for her own brother who was disappeared in the war.
Esto es importante, el que los cementerios clandestinos sean abiertos, ¿no? Para saber realmente la verdad.
No one else had dared to bring forensic anthropologists to get to the bottom of that well and the truth.
Acá llegamos al piso de roca.
What they found was horrifying. The remains of 162 people, some shot, others bludgeoned with a sledgehammer, all thrown in, even if still alive.
Y por supuesto que lo más terrible que uno siente es cuando encuentra osamentas de niños, ¿no?
But Aura Elena wasn't content to let the truth stay buried, so she kept digging, and what she learned next was stunning. When all the killing was over, Ramiro and another boy were still alive.
Eso es inalcanzable, ¿verdad? Pensar que hacen tanto daño a los padres y que después se los llevan.
Unimaginable, the men who had ruthlessly killed so many would spare anyone. But they spared Ramiro. Trophy or act of mercy, it wasn't clear. Ramiro remembers the soldiers taking him, then asking if he recognized any of the bodies they passed. His will to survive dictated the answer, even as a child.
We said, no, I don't remember. I don't know this person. And the person who was hanging from the tree was my dad.
And just when it seemed Ramiro had lived his darkest hour, the very man he saw taking his mother away was now taking him home.
He adopted you. He decided to change your last name.
Yeah.
And to take you on as a son. But did he ever treat you like a son?
No.
How would you say he treated you in one word?
A slave.
A slave.
Ramiro, now forced to start a new life with a man who was involved in killing his entire family, even forced to call him dad.
When I was living with Lopez, I always want to escape. Sometimes they don't even give me food. I was starving. I was skinny.
How did you manage to keep living with him and not show that you knew what he had done?
I just pretend to live my life like normal, but inside of me was like a volcano sleeping.
A sleeping volcano.
Yeah.
Inside that volcano, there was also a grieving child who still desperately wanted to find his parents, even if they were dead. Lining these corridors in a central Guatemala City compound are hundreds of stories of other lives interrupted by war.
This is it here.
FAFG, case 1433, grave 17, skeleton 15.
And how many in this grave?
This grave?
Yeah.
This is grave 17, 64 bodies.
64 in one grave.
64 men.
Freddie Petrarelli's own life was interrupted when his family escaped threats during the conflict.
Whenever I'm doubting what I do, I come up here. It kind of clears everything up really quickly.
Freddie is a forensic anthropologist. With X-ray and DNA technology, his team tries to identify the remains that are exhumed and tries to understand how they died.
If it was my family, I would never stop. So I can't stop looking for anyone else's family.
Freddie's lab took a DNA sample from Ramiro, but they couldn't find a match. His parents' remains still lost to the past.
The sad part is I don't have a place to go, like, you can bury your parents. You can go and talk to them.
They never found your families.
It was already impossible to recognize them.
Have you found a different way to talk to them then?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
When I talk to them, it's when I'm praying. And I can tell you, they are with me everywhere. Wherever I go, they are with me.
Coming up, Ramiro is living a secret life in Canada. His mission, making the murderers pay.
If I'm alive, because it's for one purpose.
And we meet the politician who says all the killers should walk free.
There may be some impunity, but it's better than war.
Guatemala City. Behind the countless faces that wordlessly pass each other here every day, there are countless silent survivors. But the ghosts of Guatemala speak of its violent past. Faces of the disappeared, still demanding to be found. More than a decade after the massacre that wiped out his entire village, Ramiro Cristales was simply trying to survive, still living shoulder to shoulder with a family that wasn't his, and a man involved in murdering his real family. Violence still underpinned their relationship.
Every time he was drunk, he had that scary face. He grabbed a machete and put the machete on my neck. And I was saying, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me.
Even so, Ramiro patiently waited, hoping someone would eventually find him. By 1999, someone was on the case. Sarah Romero, too, was displaced by conflict. As a prosecutor, she was moved especially by the fate of the children of Dos Erres.
Que esas violaciones me hacían hasta sentir repugnancia. Creo que eso fue lo que más me afectó, porque imaginarme que a niñas menores de edad les hacían varios caibiles, todos los caibiles les hacían esas violaciones. Sí, era terrible eso.
She could do nothing for those children, but could she rescue the boy who survived? First, she had to find him, and to do that, she had to get past the man who abducted him, the soldier Santos Lopez. So she knocked on his door and told him she already knew everything about Dos Erres. And then the unexpected happened. He confessed.
Contó toda la historia. Era algo que le pesaba. Sí, me decía, mire, yo no sé qué nos pasó. Era como era su interpretación, ¿verdad? Él me dijo, era como que todos tuviéramos al diablo adentro, me dijo. Y era una euforia, me dijo. Una euforia de ver tanta sangre, me dijo.
Then she asked him, where was the boy Ramiro? 17 years after the massacre, Ramiro was no longer a boy. It turns out he is a soldier in the army. Sarah had not only been looking for a survivor, but also a witness to one of the military's most gruesome crimes against its own people. And that put him in grave danger. Incredibly, Lopez himself delivered Ramiro to Sarah, out of self-interest or belated remorse, hard to say. Still, Ramiro wasn't safe in Guatemala, so within days he was en route to less familiar terrain, where he didn't even speak the language. Canada had agreed to shelter him.
It was hard for me because I don't know the language, and at that time I don't even know how to say thank you.
It was a painful adjustment, and in the background, still the lingering grief over losing his parents, Victor and Patrona. But from the safety of Canada, Ramiro could finally do what he believes his life was spared for him to do.
Now I understand, if I'm alive because it's for one purpose, I'm the voice of the people who doesn't exist. I want everybody who participated in the massacre of my family in jail.
It meant another encounter with Lopez, and after all these years, finally testifying against him. It meant reliving his trauma yet again.
You don't remember? You killed my own family, and now you call your family my family? It says, no, enough is enough.
On trial, Lopez denied culpability. But by abducting Ramiro, he had preserved the most damning evidence against him. They came face to face in court, decades after he destroyed Ramiro's life.
I feel so angry. I didn't even look at him.
To have a witness survive such a horrific event, but to be of an age that they can remember everything, especially because of the trauma it induced in him, is incredible. I mean, if there was ever a case of living evidence, it is Ramiro.
In the end, Ramiro helped convict Lopez of crimes against humanity.
Señor Santos Alonso tiene algo que decir después de haber escuchado la sentencia.
Sentenced last November to start serving more than 5,000 years in prison. 30 years for each person killed in the massacre. This chapter of Ramiro's story could and should have ended here, but there may be another torturous twist to his long road to justice. Santos Lopez may yet walk free. Hard to understand, but there is growing support for an amnesty for people like Lopez, if a proposed law is passed that convicted killers of Dos Erres would be set free within 24 hours.
It's like a slap on the face. So they can be a killers, they can be a murderers, they can be a rippers, and they can still free. So that's not fair.
Objections from victims and rights groups have stalled the bill at Congress and heaped criticism on the congressman who introduced it. But a final vote could still come, giving amnesty to those implicated in the gravest war crimes.
There are people who have dedicated their lives to finding out who was behind massacres and who is missing and all of that. If they continue their work, what happens to them under the provisions of this?
Most of them are doing it out of a sense of vengeance. We want to do away with that.
They say they're doing it for justice.
Everyone does everything for justice. That's a sales point.
What would you say to someone like this man, Ramiro Cristales?
You ask them to forgive.
I cannot forgive him, but I cannot live with anger, because if not, I will destroy myself, and that's not life.
Fellow Canadians passing him by may never know it, but his is the story of a survivor who now just wants to be left in peace.